Hey everybody, this is Pete Morris. We're with the ComancheZOOM on Thursday night of August 27th. The topic tonight is the emergency procedures. We have a whole bunch of them from various Comanches, and the thrust of the story is how to survive them, how to deal with them both physically and mentally to get through these emergencies, and what you should do to be ready for them. That's the whole idea. At this point, we're going to go back to giving you all a chance to do what you want to do. So I'm going to let you unmute yourselves, and we'll go with the old who you are, where you are, and what you fly. So chime in.
Well, I guess I'm up, so I'll talk first. I've got a desk full of emergency procedures. A lot of them were from other POHs, and the one I'm looking at mostly is from the internet. And what I would try and do, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be successful, is to bring in a backdrop so that we're looking at the checklist rather than me. Please excuse me, I've been a flight instructor for 50 years, and so if I drop into the instructor mode, I don't mean to, because everyone that I see here has gobs of experience, probably as much or more than I do. So if I get into the instructor mode, just tell me to quiet down. We're talking about emergency procedures tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to look at emergencies. Unfortunately, emergencies that come along are unexpected, and so having gone through all the checklists at a time like this when we're relaxed and open to thought is the best opportunity.
Okay, George, when we get around to 7:30, we'll actually start the presentation, but now we get a chance for people to say hello. So who you are, what you are, where you are, and what you fly. Come on in.
Hi, I'm John Futter. I fly a 260C out of Orange, Massachusetts, and I am not near Orange, Mass right now, but here I am.
Well, then I'm going to pipe in, John, because I'm Tom Marino. I fly a 250 out of Southbridge, Massachusetts. I'm
Pete Morris. I fly a 250 out of Danielson, and sometimes I fly to Southbridge, all the way up there just for breakfast.
I'm Ray Fay, and I fly a 260B model out of Madison, Wisconsin.
Hi guys, I'm Mike Saladino. I fly a 1959 250 out of New Orleans.
Did you fly it today?
Absolutely not. We didn't get much from the storm at all. We lucked out on this one.
Oh, good.
I'm Mick Van Meter. I fly out of China Lake, California. I have a 59 250.
Where was that from?
China Lake, California.
Okay. Are you in the smoke screen?
Yeah, it's very smoky right now. I haven't flown in a while. It's been a couple weeks since. It's not too bad. I can see the mountains now, but yeah, they're only 10 miles away, and they're 8,000 feet. But right. There are times when, and we have swamp coolers, so it's just sucking all that smoke into the house. So it's not real great time, and it's triple-digit heat. So.
Oh,
and the same 9 you got there.
Wow. That's incredible.
Well, I'm Dave Gittleman. I'm in sunny Florida, and I fly a 180 Comanche, which I've had for 51 years.
Dave, I'm going to change your name for you.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Just to make it easy.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tom McKim, and I fly a 260D, a 1967.
Jessica from the email.
Okay, is that not working?
No,
Is that, what do you have to do, raise your hand? And I can disconnect.
We can hear you.
Oh, you can't hear? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, at any event, I'm Tom McKim, fly a 1967 Comanche 260B based in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, although I'm currently in Bozeman, Montana, enjoying some of that California smoke.
You're out there with your Comanche?
Not this time,
Oh.
because I have flown it out here many times.
Cool.
Don't they have a festival in Bozeman? Petunia Festival or something like that?
Oh, Sweet Pea, the Sweet Pea
Sweet
Festival.
Pea, that's it, yeah. That was close.
So many festivals that it had to be canceled this year.
Oh, okay.
Bozeman Film
California
Festival,
smoke actually blowing out that way?
purely virtual.
Sorry. Is the California smoke actually blowing out that far?
Yes, oh yeah, yes. Not so bad today, but for the last 3 days or so, it's been such that you know the mountains are right outside my house, and you literally couldn't see them. So
I changed all the filters in my house to the maximum filtration, and my car has a really good cabin air filter, but even with that, I could get in the car and I could feel the grit on my fingers. It was getting through. So I went and replaced that as well.
So how do you do this? Leave Zoom.
Oh, by the way, I'm Terry Lindsay. I have a 260B in Southern California at Whiteman Airport. Had it for about 5 years. Still looking, in about a week or two, my annual expires, and I have to take the tail off and look at that. I'm still looking how to do that.
Hi, I'm Larry Wright out in San Diego, and I've got a 59 180 Comanche that I've had for 41 years. You know, scale AD, that's not really hard to do. It wasn't for me. You just got to heat up your hub a little bit and then pull out the pipe and do the dye penetrant on the inside. I don't find it that hard.
How many times have you done it, Larry?
Once. And I have the 180 that has the heavier tube. So I'm one of the guys that replied to the FAA when they were trying to get us exempted.
Yep.
And it really ticks me off that I have to do it because my hub shouldn't crack and I should be under the same rules as the twins, you know, because I've got the thicker tube, but I'm still stuck doing it.
Yep.
Hey, gang. It's
Hey,
CJ.
CJ.
Hey, Pete. I'm in a new place tonight. Better internet. Video.
Terrific.
Yeah, so.
I'll let you take over the who, what, and where.
Hi, everybody. I'm CJ, and so we're doing the who you are, where you are, and what you fly. And I am normally in Vermont or New Hampshire, flying either a 180 or a 260B. Tomorrow I'll be flying a 260C, and I've been flying since the 90s. Anybody else want to jump in and say who you are, where you are, and what you fly?
Hi, everybody. I'm Troy Watson, and I'm just south of Dallas, Texas. I've got a 1962 Comanche 250.
Welcome and congratulations, Troy.
Hi, this is Lonnie from Charlotte, North Carolina. I fly a 1960 180. And I did want to mention, if anybody has a biannual flight review due, I'm actually past due, although I do have a biannual schedule for Wednesday, but I called my FSDO, and if you're not aware, biannuals there is a forbearance. However, they do require you to earn 3 wings credits. And if you earn 3 wings credits, that will do for your biannual until further notice.
Lonnie, that is a great PSA. Thank you so much. We will, Pete and I will work. to try to get as many as possible of these wings approved.
You guys keep records of all of the people who have attended, because I haven't. And
We do. We will.
Nice, so and next year I have my biennial due.
Yeah, everybody who registers, we have that as a list.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Rob Lenert from the FAA. I'm here tonight so that we can get wings credit for this seminar. It's good to see everybody. I am not a pilot, but I've got probably 1,000 hours doing test flying for GPS systems and autopilot troubleshooting. So I've got a little bit of experience. I'm very familiar with a lot of the navigation systems, communication systems, how they operate. But it's really great to be here. And my partner, Dan Carter, also has joined us. And as far as FAA FASTTeam program manager, and he's joining us tonight also. So, hey, Dan, you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Dan Carter. I'm out of the Bradley FSDO. I'm the ops frontline manager, and I work with Rob. And I got invited to be here tonight, and I'm looking forward to it. Looks like a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
You guys
Oh,
want
thanks
to,
for being here, Dan.
You guys want to do a couple-minute plug for the Wings program? Explain it.
Sure. So everyone here, we captured, we'll capture the email attendee list, and you'll be seeing a email come in showing your Wings credit for attending tonight. It won't say specifically the Comanche Club, but it will say credit adjustment, because we didn't do a spans notice and send it out ahead of time, but you'll still get credit for it tonight. And I heard someone else mention that, Wings is one way that you can definitely do your flight review, and that is true. So yeah, at the end, I'll send my email out, and if anyone, or I'll send it to someone, and it can be shared. If anyone has any questions, you can contact myself or Rob.
Dan, you can put your email if you want, or your contact information in the chat. Go in the chat and leave it there.
Sure, will do.
Also, Peter, I put together just a mini PowerPoint just now about the Wings program. And at some point, if you'd like, I can present that.
If you want to go, go ahead and share it.
Okay. All right. All righty. Just be up in a second here. Do you have to send me a present screen, or do I just have the option? Oh,
I think
share
if
screen.
you got the green thing that says share, you should be able to do it.
I've got it. Yes, here we go.
Now, just real quick before you start, Rob, thanks for being here. For all those who are texting and chatting going, how do I register? So you want to go to meetings.northeastcomanche.org after you have registered with the FAAsafety.gov. But for this particular one, we'll collect your addresses if you go to meetings.northeastcomanche.org and say, I want Wings credit. So you'll see a register link. If you look on that page, just pop in and register for tonight's event and click on the I want Wings credit, and we'll collect everybody's email addresses and provide them to Rob. I also just want to say, Rob, your autopilot presentation, your absolutely amazing presentation, continues to be one of the most viewed presentations we have. There was so much information on maintenance and operations and tweaking, and it's been a huge benefit to our safety and competence. So thank you so much again for doing that.
Well, I appreciate that feedback, CJ. I really enjoyed doing the presentation. As a matter of fact, I've polished it up or added to it to make broaden it out, not just to be for the Piper Automatic Series autopilots, but all the other autopilots too. And actually, just about wrapped that up. So, but anyway, thank you for the opportunity. It was great. I'm ready to share my screen now, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. So over here, you should see to document your training. We've got the Wings Pilot Proficiency Program. It provides online record retention of all the Wings programs or the Wings qualified events that you attend. And it's a way for you to document and build your credit. And it's all done on this website right here, FAASafety.gov. And hey, Dan, if you would jump in at any point if I'm missing something, I'm sort of new to the FASTTeam program management team. Dan's been with it a little bit longer than I. So Dan, please pipe in if there's anything that we need to increase on here. All right.
Okay, Rob, you're doing great though.
All right, buddy. Thanks. And so Wings is easy as 1, 2, 3. You create an account on the FAASafety.gov. The web page looks just like this here. And what you do is you select the Pilots tab here. And then you're able to, and you tend to, and you complete your pilot profile. In other words, you enter a profile in here, your name, address, email address, and the type of pilot that you are, the type of flying that you do. Dan, could you elaborate on this a little bit more for me, please?
Sure, Rob, no problem. So I don't want to make it too complicated or too difficult for everyone tonight, but I guess the best way to describe it is you have 3 knowledge activities that you have to complete. So there's a knowledge 1, 2, and 3. And so you have to complete those 3. And then there's 3 flight activities that you have to complete. And it's 1, 2, and 3 for those as well. So once you have your 3 knowledge credits done, and then your 3 flight topics done, then it'll automatically update and it'll show that that meets the qualifications for your flight review. And so once you get in there, if you don't like, it's a little hard for me to kind of do this like this, but if you don't like the 3 that they suggest for your flight topics, you can select other ones. And probably, I think one thing, a lot of people really like the program, but the automation is not super user-friendly. So I think the best thing I could recommend is when you go through this, have someone walk through it with you. And we have volunteers that spend their time doing this. They're called Wings Pros. And if you go to the FAASafety.gov website that Rob has up there and you type in Wings, W-I-N-G, in the keyword, when you go to the directory, yeah.
Section.
Yep. Or you can send me an email and I'll put you in touch with the folks in your area. But there's people that will help you walk through this. Because I'm afraid, Rob, if we just try to do this real quick on the fly here, I think we might confuse folks a little bit more.
Sure. I just was hoping to do just a quick overview.
Yeah. No,
just to sort of introduce it to them. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the other thing is, what I can do is I can send out to CJ. I have a YouTube video that is a lot easier maybe to understand than maybe to just a PowerPoint, because it'll actually show the website. And we have a rep, a Wings Pro, his name is Dave Strasberg, that made it. And I can share that with the group. But just remember, the big thing to remember is you need 3 knowledge credits, which tonight will count for 1. This is going to be a basic knowledge 3. So you'll need a 3. So now you've got a 3, and now you'll need a 2 and a 1. So you need a 1, 2, and 3 of each one. So you need 3 ground, think of it as ground training topics, and 3 flight training topics. Now the flight training, it can all be in one flight, and you can go on the website. It prints out a little checklist of what you want to do with your instructor. They sign it off, and any instructor can put you in for your Wings credit, and that will qualify for your flight review. And like I said, I think it would probably be a lot better if we send that YouTube video out.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, on this next slide that I'm presenting,
yeah.
If you all know how to do a print screen, these are links to YouTube videos that will help you to log in, to join the Wings program, and then how to use the Wings credits, and then the instructor portals right here too for the flight instructors, CFI flight instructors here.
And
So,
Rob, you have the ability to select that text. You can paste it into the chat and it will be available to everyone.
Okay, why don't I do that?
Yeah, what I'll do as we go through the meeting tonight, I'll send some stuff out to everyone, the YouTube video that I was talking about and so forth, just so we don't hold everyone up now.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and make a copy of that and put it in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Given the
Very good.
COVID lockdown, this ability to get a flight review and stay legal and trained is really helpful. So thanks for going through and explaining that.
Keep in mind that the Wings method of getting your flight review done does involve flying with an instructor.
Yes.
For at least as many hours as going for a flight review. So I'm all in favor of it, and it makes you look good in the eyes of the FAA if there's ever a time that you need to look good in their eyes. But it doesn't actually cut down on the amount of flight time you have to put in to stay current. It actually increases it slightly. Nothing wrong with that. One thing I wanted to add about Wings is
can I
that
jump in for a second? Malcolm, can I jump in for a second? Just to let you know, with the Wings program, the way it's set up, it's a little different now. It's not based on time. So if you can get those three flight topics done in 45 minutes, it doesn't matter to the FAA anymore. That's a change. So it's no longer, it used to be based on hours and stuff, and it's not. It's just based on completion. So if you plan your flight out, it could be significantly less. That's not a selling point, but it is kind of a common misconception out there that it's based on time, and it's not anymore. You can, whatever it takes.
The other thing I wanted to just chime in on is that anytime you fly with someone who's an instructor, you can then send them after the fact a request for Wings credit. For instance, I just logged into the Wings website just now, and there was a request from someone who I flew with 8 months ago who requested credit for the duel that I did. I just haven't been in the site for a while. He never mentioned it that he was asking for it, but I'm happy to validate it and send it on because he's obviously is working on a Wings credit. And so anytime you've flown with somebody, even if it's a week ago, a month ago, 6 months ago, if it's in your logbook and you got dual from them, you can go in and ask them for credit via the Wings website. You don't have to email them or anything. You can just go in there and type in the name of the instructor you flew with, and the Wings website will find it.
We got about.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pete.
We got about 7 minutes till the presentation itself starts. So I'm going to do the old commercial thing. You will still be able to talk, but while you're doing that, I'm going to share the our help request. Go ahead and talk while you read.
Oh, CJ.
This is a test, right? Go ahead.
If you want us to be able to read that, Pete, you're going to have to increase the size on it.
Well, it works good for us. Hey, CJ. Yeah, don't forget, I'll sign your Wings credits for the last flight for the emergency procedures that we just went through.
Fantastic. So,
yeah.
And I guess I'll just explain that. Oh, go ahead, George.
If we look close enough, we might come up with that, with the amount of credit that would lead you towards a flight review.
That should make the insurance company happy. And we definitely want the insurance company happy.
Yeah, and just to expound on the Wings program, I find it fun. If you don't find it fun, it's not worth doing. But flying is fun, and the education is fun. This afternoon, I did the IFR proficiency program. The knowledge part in it was fun just to do it. And confirm that.
Right there at the upper part of your screen, if you have not already registered, that's how you do it. Go to northeastcomanche.org. On that page, click on the ComancheZOOM page link, and then partway down on the left-hand side, there is near the top, there is a registration form link. Fill that out, send it in, and you're golden.
Hey, this is Dan again. if you all would like for me to come back and do a proper presentation on wings, I could do 10, 15 minutes and it would be thorough. The best way is if I share my screen and I go onto the actual website, and I would probably bring in Dave Strasberg because he's so well, he explains it so well. I think that would probably do justice. If that's something you're interested in, I'd be happy to do that.
I would say we would love that. And in addition to that, for everybody's benefit, many of you saw the autopilot presentation. Well, we had a series of 5, but one of the most crucial ones, because it covered the existing autopilots that many of our Comanches shipped with, was done by Rob Lenert. The thing that, and Rob is, and Dan, this is the fun part. We've got Rob and now you committed to come back and say, to talk to us about, we're from the FAA and we're here to help you, really. what changed in 2016? But as the Zoom stuff started to show us, like the Part 43 regulations, the fact that we were certified under Car 3, not Part 23, there are a ton of things that the FAA have done to help us with our older airplanes keep flying. So we are totally excited to do that. And our emphasis right now is to get as much of the safety information, you know, whether it's improvements in systems or things our pilots can do out there as quickly as possible, which is the only reason that I haven't been like, come and talk to us about this topic, but we're excited. And so thanks for being here. Thanks for willing to spend the time with us.
You know, those of you that are looking at the participants, we got 67 people online right now.
Wow. CJ, have you flown that 260C up from Virginia yet?
Yep, tomorrow from North Carolina, further than
North Carolina, and you're going to, what's your destination?
Yep, Romeo Victor Lima, Reidsville.
Okay, so you said it was 2.5 hours or something like that with the wheels down.
With the wheels down, it's going to be about 3 hours, 20 minutes, depending on winds.
How's the weather going to be?
That is something we're watching closely. If we don't like it, we'll be asking for an extension.
Right. Yeah.
So far, it looks okay.
That's good. That's good. Confident about the airplane?
Yes, sir. Taxied it around today. Thanks for asking.
Oh, it's great. So you're down there right now.
That's why I'm here. Yeah, I'm in a new place that's much warmer. I actually brought my ski parka because in Vermont, we're starting to get into real chilly weather, and it was 101 today.
Oh, wow. Perfect. Well, good luck with that. Hey,
looking forward to it.
Keep reporting in on that, on your progress, and you know, any of the excitement that goes along with it.
I never want to talk about excitement and aviation in the same sentence. Oshkosh, yeah. Learning new stuff, yeah. Other than that, I want it to be boring, boring, boring.
Right.
Yeah. Would you give me control for a minute? I've never had it, and just want to see how it works.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Pete, did you hear me?
I'm sorry. You're really soft, Frank.
Could you give me, put something on the screen for me to mess with for just a minute? I've never done it. I might need it tonight.
Okay. What do you want?
How about the pictures?
Okay, hang on. It's going to take a second.
While he's doing that, I just want you to know that I did load those links up for the videos for the Wings program onto the chat, so anybody can go in there and copy them.
I'm not sure I can find it real fast here, Hank. I'm sorry.
Okay. They're all hooked onto that email you sent us today.
Yep.
Yep. And Pete, can I screen share for one moment?
Yeah, go for it.
All righty. The thing I want to show you all is, this is an actual photo from an actual emergency procedures review with George Merriam. And actually, Pete, I just emailed you the photo because I don't have Zoom set up to access my photos. And I don't know if you can do this, but we've got 2 minutes left. And if you can throw the photo up that I just emailed you, I wasn't going to show it just because it seems a little self, but I figured, George is presenting. This was just taken on Saturday during an emergency procedures review. I think we were trying to figure out all the possible ways you could end up with a wing on fire, and we look much too funny because we started thinking of funny ways you could catch a wing on fire. So there's 4 people in the airplane. We all look like we're laughing, and that is actually why.
Mhm.
Is that what you're looking at?
That's the
yeah.
one.
It does look like too much fun for a wing fire.
An actual wing fire, yes, but it is good to have planned ahead of time to think, well, what would I do? And then the second question, of course, is how on earth am I going to end up with a wing on fire? And you know, when we started to think about it, we realized there were quite a number of ways it could happen.
Yeah, like when Bernie and I were coming back from Sky Manor and the gas cap was missing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Well, normally we'd be saying who you are, where you are, and what you fly, but I think it's the magic witching hour. So, George, I'm gonna, Pete, if it's all right with you, I'm gonna take you for a second. But George Merriam instructed me in emergency procedures on Saturday because I was going to be ferrying an airplane and I wanted to have recent experience, even though I qualify under the open pilot clause in the exact same make and model. And then I happened to ask somebody who's been supporting our aircraft a long time who was a technical person, what is the one thing he wished that he could convey to as many Comanche pilots as possible? And he said, I would want to convey to everybody emergency procedures and the psychology of high stress situations so that we would all stop having mostly perfectly good airplanes and yet doing dumb things because we got stressed and didn't and panicked. So I just wanted to put the blame in the proper place. I want to thank George and Rob and all the people he just brought in for supporting us and all of us Comanche drivers in this way. Pete, over to you, and then George, you're on.
Well, actually, I would just say, George, you're on. What would you like me to show first?
You know, emergency procedures are not predictable. So you can't say, I'm going to determine what emergency procedure I'm going to do. I would say that emergency procedures just pop up and you have no idea where they came from or what to do with them. And it's nice to have the backup of a checklist. But, you know, and I was looking through one of the POHs for the 260C, and it elaborated on a whole bunch of care items that you execute before the flight so that we're always looking for that boring flight, uneventful. How was your flight? Well, it was just totally uneventful. Nothing to talk about, nothing happened, the airplane flew fine, yada, yada. But it came about by the fact that you gave it some thought before you went. And one was, where are you going? And this is the instructor part. We're talking about the preliminaries to get ready for a flight. So you check your notices, you check the weather, you check how you're feeling and that kind of stuff. What you're trying to do as instructors, and it should be fun, as CJ and I and John and Kelly had fun getting from our departure point right near Bedminster, New Jersey, up to Orange, Massachusetts. And what was it, a 2 hour, no, it was 1.5 on the way back. And it was totally uneventful. But along the way, we started from A and went through the entire emergency checklist and itemized every single one of them. So whatever pops up first, and let's say it's an electrical system failure, you know, what kind of an electrical system failure? Is it smoke in the cockpit? And is it night IMC? You've got some serious work to do. But if it's just a radio failure, then you might drop back and say, what caused that radio failure? There's a lot of things that you can Wouldn't it be nice to just pull up a checklist and say, I wonder if I have that. Let me see if I can find it over here. Because I did put some on. I'll see if I can do the radio screen. If I can't, everyone else has their POH. Oh, share. Let's try that. Yeah. And sure enough, they're over here, but they didn't come up. Oh, they're there. Well, what kind of failure do we have? Oh, no, the engine failure. So we have an engine out procedure, so we're going to have to postpone the radio failure for just a little bit. Isn't it funny how emergency procedures work? We have an emergency, an engine failure on takeoff. All right. If you did your procedures correctly, you did your passenger briefing, you did a taxi check, you know what runway you're supposed to use, and when you got to that runway, there is a briefing that you want to do to get ready for something like this. That is, what kind of runway do you have? How far, how long is it? You'll say, we use the center section of a 9,000 foot runway. We've got 4,500 feet available. Any problems before rotation, we'll pull the power, hit the brakes, stay on the runway. Any problems after rotation, but below safe altitude, we're going to land straight forward. Above safe altitude, we'll come back around, knowing the wind conditions on the field, and we will conduct ourselves accordingly. Now, wouldn't that be nice to have precluded this engine failure on takeoff? But if it does happen, are we supposed to, it depends on where you are. If you're on the runway, you're just going to stay on the runway. But on takeoff, could be any portion of that takeoff. Worst case scenarios below safe altitude. What is safe altitude? You know your airplane, so you'll know where your safe altitude is. But let's say that we're at a point where we can switch off the master switch, fuel selector to off, magneto switch to off, flaps 40 degrees, landing gear straight or landing straight ahead, touchdown at the slowest possible airspeed. That'll work nicely if you have runway ahead of you. If you don't, you're just probably, depending on the terrain, and it will go through that. Chances are, if you are at below safe altitude, you don't have time to think about that. So you're going to have to run it through your thought pattern that you devoted a little bit of time just before takeoff.
George,
yes, sir.
do you want me to set up the CheckMate one for my plane as a share?
Oh, yes.
All right, I'll do that.
Okay, I've got engine failures in flight as well. And I was talking to Pete about, oh, here we go. How about if I eliminate this one? Did everybody see that? Here we go. I love it. So engine loss. In flight, engine loss immediately after takeoff. Fuel selector off. I'll tell you what, you're busy. Immediately after takeoff. Where is that fuel selector? Let's turn it off. Mixture, idle cutoff. You're going to land on the runway, flaps down, gear as required. Let's put gear down, and master switch and mags off. I would think that that would be considering loss of structure, because. But what about that door? You know, if that door open and throw a wedge in it. Didn't really think about that. Let's go to the power loss in flight, and that's above safe altitude. So you're looking at A, B, C, D, E. If you do that, you're looking at the first thing you want to do. It's going to be a surprise to you. Airspeed. Airspeed's going to be 87 knots, 100 miles an hour. Why did it quit? Probably carburetor. It would be nice to have a flow. And that flow starts from the left and runs up across the screen or the dashboard for whatever you happen to come across. But note the wind direction, and if it was icing, then it will come back. And of course, whenever the engine starts, it's probably based on what you just did a little bit ago. This is an engine loss in flight. If you did something and the engine quit, redo what you just did, like switching fuel. So switch back to what you had before, but go through those items. Note the wind direction. If you're going to have to land because you can't get that airplane, when the engine fails due to an explosion, you know the next thing is landing off field. So find a place to land. That's B, best place to land. C, do the checklist. And this is the checklist. Try and get that airplane started that blew up. You're not going to get the airplane started. You're going to have to land. So the landing is going to be executed. Pick a landing spot and only change your mind once. Mixture then goes to full rich to see if it'll start. Fuel selector, switch tanks. You just ran out of fuel. Fuel pump on. I was on base leg at what's that, Laconia, and the engine quit. The thing that brought it back was switch fuel tanks and put all your fuel pumps on if you have more than one. Engine comes right back. It was fuel management, the reason for a lot of fuel failure, of engine failures. Fuel pump on. Primer, make sure it's locked, magneto's checked, master switch on. So that is your engine failure. And where did we come up with that? Okay, so next would maybe revert back to that electrical failure. Now, you know, you've got an electrical, what do we have here? If no restart, then you're going to have to land the airplane. Master switch off. It's a little bit of a different scenario. You've got to shut stuff off and then get the airplane ready for a landing. In the airplane I had, it was a two-handed canopy roll, and I wasn't about to do that. It's fly the plane. Notice what it says on the bottom of each page on your emergency procedures. Fly the plane. Then navigate to your best target for landing, and then communicate. D, after you've gone through the checklist and you still can't get that airplane started, that engine started, then declare an emergency and get ready to evacuate the airplane. And that's a whole scenario in itself. Seat belts fastened and nice and tight. Flaps as required, gear down or up, depending on your terrain. Master switch off this time. Unlatch the door and protect. The airplane is owned by the insurance company, so protect your passengers, protect you and your passengers. So down to electrical failure. Worst case scenario here is an electrical fire. It seems like right from the beginning we did electrical fire, and the quick and easy correction is reach over and shut off the master switch. Then shut off all your switches, pull all your circuit breakers, and chances are that smoke will dissipate. If it doesn't, you may have more of an issue than you care to deal with. But let's read the checklist now while you got things off. All electrical devices and master switch off. Vents. Didn't think about vents. Cabin heat off. And vents. Let's see. Pull generator circuit breaker. That's a good idea. See, there's so many things that we don't think about. If the fire is out, the master switch on only if critical. Any kind of a situation like that, you want to land as soon as possible. They run that through the scenario so often too. Land as soon as possible. You got a situation. Then one essential electrical device at a time. Pick the most important. What would be the most important item? Maybe a radio. Then reset circuit breakers only if critical. Door may be occupied as an exhaust. Get rid of that smoke in the cockpit. It may be toxic. Now, how does that compare with my checklist here? Alternator output check, circuit breakers check, head jacks and plugs checked. You don't know where that fire is coming from. And that was radio failure. Okay. So we have an engine fire in flight, and it could possibly be from fuel. So let's look at the mixture and go to lean, idle cutoff. So you just set up an off airport landing. Fuel selector, select the fuel off, master switch off, cabin heat and air off, and increase airspeed to extinguish the fire. Now, you remember diving, and that's the thing. There's two ways to get out of altitude. One's with the flaps on at VNO, or one's with the flaps off at VNE. And different DPEs will promote different ways. I like the VNE. That'll give you 2,000 feet per minute rate of descent, depending on how high you are. One of Pete's checklists said, and I'm reading it here, oxygen system failure. So you must have been higher up because you were flying at twin and they were turbocharged, so you've got some other situations. So you get down to 1,000 feet and then find a place to land. If you didn't put the airplane fire out, you're going to have to get out of that airplane. So get it on the ground, get that door open, get it on the ground, get out of the airplane. I know it's a tough scenario to have to consider, but with a little bit of thought at this point, might be the right way to go. What do we have next? I had electrical system failure procedures, alternator failure procedures, and that was radios all off but COM1, lights all off, but the beacon, circuit breakers checked, all in, and avionics master switch off, master switch cycle, avionics master switch back on, pitot heat off, auxiliary fuel pump off, electrical turn coordinator, cover that one so you don't pay attention to it. VFR, proceed to closest to airport as soon as possible land. That was that electrical failure. And systems failure procedure, circuit breakers is pretty much a similar scenario each time. What's next on the engine failure during start? Now that's a great one. I'm sure half the people we're talking to have had that pop during start. You flooded it and it backfired, and now you've got a huge flame out there. Do not grab the door handle and get out and run like hell. Keep that engine cranking, and it said if it starts, run a few seconds and shut down and inspect. Keep that engine cranking. If no start, idle mixture cutoff while you're cranking. Fuel selector off, throttle full open, and continue cranking for a few seconds. Master mags off, evacuate the airplane, fire extinguisher. You can save your airplane or you can destroy your airplane by a simple keep that engine cranking.
What is the purpose of cranking it to get the fire out? How does that work?
Well, it's opposed to what it did on our Cherokee 6 is it, and this is a fuel injected airplane too, a air intake. It takes the fire and sucks it into the engine, as I understand it. Mechanics? We have mechanics aboard. What happened? Did somebody kick in on that one?
Feel free to unmute and jump in.
That would be correct. You're actually sucking the flame up into the engine, and the
through the air intake.
Right. The question is, what if it was just a simple backfire that started it? Then that'll work. If something else, a fuel line is broken or something like that, that's feeding it, you won't be able to extinguish it that easily.
Right. Do you know of a scenario that took place that with a fuel issue that the airplane, if it starts, if you have an engine fire during start and you can't put it out, the only way to do it is to evacuate.
I did see a Bonanza do that once. Actually burned up. It was quite incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, if it burns up, you don't have to replace the engine. We had a Cherokee Warrior that burned firewall forward, and they had to repair it. It was 3 years in the repair and very costly. Had it burned up, everybody that had a new airplane. So that's an area. Icing. Yeah, we've all gotten into icing. I remember in a 210 over Shasta, we're at 14,000, and it was at night. And what are we watching when we're thinking there's a possibility of icing? But what do you watch when? How do you know you have ice? I remember ATC locally said, what are your flight conditions? And we said, oh, it's smooth and it's dark out. Are you getting icing? Not really sure. We had a Cherokee 6 at that point, and it was night conditions. And you look at the wing, you use your flashlight. You better have a flashlight on board. And we looked at the wing. There was nothing to tell us. If wheels aren't showing, the windshield, if you look at it, can you see that ice on the windshield? The one thing that we looked at in that 210 was the airspeed indicator. And as soon as, because we knew we were collecting ice on the windshield and we could see the leading edge, but it wasn't showing us anything. And the wheels are up and there's nothing out there. There's no strut. So what do you look at to know? The only thing you got left is an airspeed indicator. As soon as that thing diminishes and at 14,000, tell air traffic control you're leaving 14,000. You got to get out of that ice. And you better hurry up and do it because you don't know what kind of ice you got. So you watch then when you're descending and air traffic control will acquiesce. And as soon as you lose the icing, you can make a different decision. But here on the icing, it says there's a couple of things you want to do. Is that heat should have been on in the first place, but make sure it's on. If you're carbureted, get that carburetor heat on immediately. Cabin heat, and try and defrost that windshield by putting a defroster on. Strongly consider 180. You got to get that confirmed with air traffic control. You know, you're out over the high terrain. A lot of the guys were reporting in from high terrain. You got to watch your elevation, how much, you know, when you're over Wyoming at 10,000 feet, you only got 3,000 feet to go before you're on terrain. So watch those decisions, especially when you're flying at night. At night in a sparsely populated area, your IFR if you're VFR. So the icing condition only makes it a place where you should have decided to make your plan during the day. Attain a higher or lower altitude. I'll tell you what, I've iced up a couple of times and I've never gotten out of it by climbing. But that's just me.
People that don't have all the luck.
I know. And it's nice to do those RUC soundings because you know where the tops are. What are you doing in the clouds when the tops are 1,000 feet above you? You know? Yeah. So increase engine and prop speed. Bring the prop up. And then if you're going to land, yeah, flaps not recommended. Land with a little higher airspeed. Sure, carrying ice all the way to the ground. Don't be slowing it down. Go as fast as you can. You want that icing on the leading edges, not underneath the wing, because that'll just make things worse.
I'll jump in here a second and tell you on a flight from Rochester, New York to RDU, Raleigh-Durham, at night, I had started out at 5,000 and I started getting ice. And so I...
What was the temperature?
Temperature was right about 32. And we were... the ice would come on and go off and come on and go off. And
you're staring at that outside air temperature.
Yeah, right. Well, I have an electronic gauge, so I didn't have to stare very much. But my wife, who's also a pilot, kept on shining the flashlight out onto the wing, and she would tell me when we had ice. And finally, I said to her, we were down to 3,000. I couldn't go any lower. And I said, all I can tell you is that we're going in the right direction. And if you're concerned about the ice, stop shining the flashlight out there.
And watch that airspeed indicator.
Right. We did fly out of it, but sometimes you're just stuck where you are, and you have to make a decision as to what you're going to do. Unfortunately, I was over the mountains and no place to go. So
yeah, Dave, on a flight like that, when you could have known a little bit more, you could have flown tomorrow morning.
True, but we were the weather forecasting back then wasn't as good as it is.
Oh, I know. Isn't it advanced now? We've got RUC soundings. The weather department is working for us a little bit better. Our forecasting procedures are better. Our anti-ice is better. TKS, all kinds of stuff. We're flying those Cirrus airplanes right now, and any sign of ice, you turn that on D4 because it's anti-ice instead of de-ice. So
and George,
get that stuff flowing and look, say yes, sir, yes, ma'am.
Yep, I want to ask people. One thing I've noticed flying a number of different Comanches is that is where do we see ice first? Would it be all right if we asked people to just chime in? I know if I've got an outside air temperature gauge going through the windscreen, that's the first place I see ice, especially rime ice. And then after that, it's lower windscreen, and then it's the leading edge inboard. But it seems to depend a little bit on which Comanche. So I wanted to ask people to just jump in and say, where do you see ice first on your Comanche?
I'll tell you, CJ, the first place you see it is whatever is the sticky outest the most. So it's going to be the pitot first, but you can't see that. It's going to be your old-fashioned analog outside air temperature probe, if you have one of those, which I don't. And it's, in my experience, along with the bottom of the windshield, maybe even before the bottom of the windshield, it's going to be the little tabs, little wing nuts that stick up from the fuel doors, the fuel filler doors. Those are the most sticky up thing that I've got on my airplane, all other sticking up type things having been removed.
Yeah,
You'll see it on
not much to collect, not much sticking out there.
You'll see it on the little nav light indicators, if you have those.
Oh, yeah.
Good one. And Pat Kiefer just said the tip tank tip, if you've got those.
Right.
But I think we all have the fuel doors wing nut lever.
No, I don't. Mine are flush, so I won't see them there.
John, yours are pretty flush too. The fuel caps don't go down, don't leave anything to indicate ice collection. I'm staring at that windshield and I'm watching the water, and when the water is flowing on that windshield, I feel good. As soon as it quits flowing, I'm not so good.
Yeah, that's helpful what Malcolm said though, because the C's did get these flush round lockdowns for the fuel door covers, but
well, they're not really flush, right? Aren't they the same as like a Cherokee 6, where it's a sort of a knurled knob with a relatively low
it is a
profile?
knurled knob. Yep. Do you have the knurled knobs and you can still see it, Malcolm?
I don't have those. I have the wing nut style ones, but I think the knurled knob would probably still collect a little bit. It might be hard to see unless it was painted a dark color.
I flew the C's a lot, and we would see them on the temperature gauge, and then we'd see it on the leading edge of the wing. I don't know. Anybody else who's got the C type push down things comment on that? The wingtip, but that's great for the ones that look like a key that us older types have, because now I know where to look. I didn't know that, Malcolm.
I got tired of the tab constantly being broken off on the hold down for the fuel doors. People would step on them and bend them. So I finally looked at it one day and I said, why do I need those anyways? So I just put in a straight, slotted
screw.
Yeah, it's a spring-loaded deal.
Yeah, that's what I have on the one that gets stepped on, which is the one nearest the main door. The other three are still the old-fashioned one.
I changed them both over to that, and it's literally is flush with the door.
So
That's
you
what
need
I have on my 260 Comanche. My 250 1960 Comanche has those.
You need a device to get that door open.
Just my thumb.
Oh, a thumb does it?
Yep.
I use a little screwdriver, my pocket knife.
Yeah, a little screwdriver.
Yep.
Yep. Becomes part of your keychain.
I can just push down on it with my thumb.
Oh, great.
And it pops right up.
And Troy Watson mentioned wingtip mirrors. And Troy, if you happen to know where to get your wingtip mirrors, so many of us want them that we want to put together a group buy, but we don't know where to get them. I took pictures of John Futter's because we're trying to track him down.
I'll check my paperwork. They came with mine, but I'm sure they're in there. I'll look at my records and see if I can't find it.
Awesome. If you throw that into the chat, we'll try to see if we can get us all a big old group buy and put on those wingtip mirrors. We may go a quarter knot slower, but we'll be able to see our gear, and now we know we'll be able to see ice in time to do something about it.
Yeah,
I don't know. In the case of the twin, I hear it just as soon as I see it. Painfully hear it because I know it's screwing up my paint.
Oh, because it's banging up against your fuselage.
That's it.
The props are shooting at you.
And it just ruins the paint.
Do you have the hot props?
No, I don't. But still, every time I've gotten ice, I've heard it just when I first saw it, I heard it immediately thereafter.
Yeah, it's banging up against that fuselage. And periodically, you got to sand it down and paint it again.
You got a nice paint job. It's very discouraging.
Oh, gee whiz. Oh, no. Yeah, there's your airplane right behind you. Yeah, we can appreciate that paint job. Let's not screw it up. The next, have we exhausted this one? The next failure is my least favorite when you put the landing gear down and nothing happens.
We've got at least 3 different ways of doing that loaded up. There's the Maurice Taylor one from the internet. There's also a very detailed one from another source. I forget, Larry Larkin, I believe. And of course, this one right here, which is the cut and dry quick one. Or pull up the cover and read the instructions.
Yeah, that's what I saw as the quickest. Now, and you got plenty of time to do that too. You put the gear down, there's no light. Was it the light or is it the gear? Did you hear anything? You should feel a little bit of rumble. when that gear comes down a little bit. John's landing gear is perfect. You can't feel it, you can't hear it. But that light comes on and reassures you.
But if the light doesn't come on, you've still got the position of the handle sticking out of the floor that tells you where the gear is.
Well, let me jump in here. If the light doesn't come on, the first thing I would do is switch the light bulb from the yellow, take the yellow one out and stick it where the green ought to be.
Well, hopefully you have a spare one in your pilot's knee pocket so you don't even have to remove the other one. But you know what you do before you even do that is you reach down and turn off the nav lights, which
there
on and are dimming the lights.
Daytime.
Was it out on the checklist? I think it was.
That's the #1 reason that you don't get a green light when you let gear down is because the green light is on, but it's so dim because the automatic dimming circuit, when you have the nav lights turned on, has made it so dim that you can't see it. If that doesn't do the trick, then go try and change the bulb. But don't bother messing around with the bulb if the handle sticking out of the floor is telling you very clearly that the gear is still up.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, when you're talking about feeling the rumble, whenever I move the gear up or down, I put my hand down there and follow the handle without looking at it. I just put my hand on the handle and follow it.
Yeah, and
Unless
for
you're in a
everybody
ski
that
and there's no handle.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, we took
Doesn't
the,
anybody feel?
what?
Doesn't anybody feel the nose wheel hit against the rudder pedals when the gear goes down?
Yeah, you
I
will.
do. Yep, right as it comes all the way down, you feel that little jink in the rudder pedals. It's like a little, it's like a little hit, a tap.
And what a surprise! You put that gear handle down and you didn't feel those in your toes. Uh-oh.
Yep.
I hate that. I hate when that happens because now you got a little work to do. So going through the checklist, you might want to lower the airspeed to 100 knots and gear lever to the off position. Disengage the motor.
That's too fast.
100 miles per hour, but preferably less.
Yeah, 87 knots, 100 miles an hour. See, reading the checklist, you can even get that wrong. Disengage the motor, push the motor release forward, fully forward, and extend the emergency gear handle to the full length. And how many people have exercised that gear with a handle? You should probably do it every time you go through a
I have less than, I think I have 35 hours in a Comanche, and I've had gear extension now 3 times.
Oh,
So,
great. You want to tell us about that? Why?
Well, it's a lot of people had opinions about what was causing it, but after changing the bungee cords and everything, I just got new gear motor and new transmission. So,
that should solve it?
well, after doing all the other diagnosis, that would appear. Comanche Gear just did the work on the motor and transmission.
Okay.
So
that doesn't.
But I mean, I think it's a marvelous. I'm sorry.
If that doesn't solve it, then your conduits are probably.
Yeah. Except the guy that was testing and the gear were moving very freely. It was clearly the motor was a problem. But anyways, I just find it a marvel of simplicity, the emergency gear extension. I mean, it's other than the fact you got to put it on jacks after you do it, it's a pretty simple process to go through. So
agreed.
Not to have to do it so frequently in the future.
Wow. 3 times in what, 40 hours?
Yeah, I've got less than 40 hours and I've had it to do it 3 times. But
yeah, I think it was a gear motor and an arrow we did about 6 months ago. I put the gear handle down, we didn't get anything. And that's where the emergency gear extension allows the gear to fall down, and then what you do is you wiggle it back and forth and well, actually you get the airstream to help you with that. What happened to my picture here? Oh, I may be timed out. You think I might be timed out?
No, I just.
You got timed out.
Yeah. Okay, kick came
Okay,
out.
here, I got it now. I ended up going somewhere else. There it is again.
How
That's
about
what
if I
yours.
X this one out? I don't want to eliminate. There it goes. Good, perfect. All right, manual gear extension. All right, and that's what I had here was that item. So I only have two.
We have also the emergency checklist from done by Larry Larkin, thanks to Henry Spellman. If you wanted to put that up, it has a lot more things on it, like low oil pressure and things like that.
Yeah.
It's a 4-pager. That gives you an idea how big it is.
Oh, wow. I had,
if we're set with this.
Tell you what, while you're on this page, I have one comment. This
Sure.
is on the if no restart and time permits, we seem to have skipped over step number 5 that says ELT on. I fly with the Civil Air Patrol out here in New Mexico, and one point I want to make on that is, one, I hope we all have 406 ELTs, and 2, turn that ELT on while you're still in flight at least 1 minute prior to your emergency landing, because that first satellite ping doesn't go up for 50 seconds. And if you're going to be if you land in a perfectly beautiful field, I'll call you on the cell phone and say, are you all right? But if you end up upside down, you want that signal. Thank you.
Repeat what you just last said. Your audio was garbled. Say again, last 1 minute, please.
Oh, okay. It's just that 1 minute before touching down. Did that get through?
No.
1 minute before touching down.
That's the important part.
As a former airline guy flying for FedEx, let me interject here for a second. For those of us, or those of you, me included, that do not have a 406 ELT, but let me assure you that every single airliner that is flying overhead is monitoring 121.5. So that is kind of standard. That is standard practice.
I knew somebody. Yeah.
I knew somebody was going to do that. Yeah. And
yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I mean, normally we're in the airline community, we're working off radio number 1, and on the number 2, we've always got it set to guard. And then I'm usually a company freak is in the standby. So for those of you that don't have a 406C, believe me, if you come up on guard and start saying, hey, I got a problem here or there, and you know who you are, where you are, what's going on, and where you think you're going to land, believe me, somebody is going to hear you pipe up.
And I would add that this month's Aviation Consumer at page 4 just came out yesterday. Has a lengthy article with data on, is a 406 ELT worth it? And statistically, there's no statistics to support that the 406 is any more likely to get you located than 121.5. And the recommendation they come up with at the end is go out and buy yourself a good quality emergency personal locator beacon, particularly a 2-way one. That it's more likely to get you found. Very interesting article, just in yesterday's Aviation Consumer, with pretty sobering data. It surprised me. Of course, if you're going to Mexico or Canada, you have to have the 406. But the article caught my attention because I was thinking about buying one, and they're basically saying save the money.
Well, I don't believe it. I had my 406 was set off accidentally, and I got a phone call from Eglin Air Force Base asking me if I knew where my airplane was, And I told them, and they confirmed that. And I couldn't get back there to turn it off for the entire weekend because it was locked up in the hangar. And when I went back there and turned it off, I had a phone call within a minute asking me if I just had turned off my ELT. So it was very, very quick, and they knew exactly where the airplane was. I was very impressed with how quickly they latched onto that.
I agree with Dave. Same thing happened to me. I spotted the airport where the airplane was right away.
Hi, John.
Hi, Dave. In fact, the guy that called was literally Colonel Sanders.
All right, George.
This is Chris. I was going to mention that I have a PLB of the Garmin InReach, I believe. And one of the nice features on it is that no matter where you are in the world, you can also send text messages. So it'll give your position on a map where your family can follow you if you're doing a long, super long cross country. But it also allows you to send text messages no matter where you're at as well. And I think it's like $30 a month I pay. But like if I'm flying to Oshkosh from California, it's great to know that if I'm over those Badlands or something and I go down, not only can I SOS, but I can also communicate with my family to let them know how things are going. So I highly recommend it. They're only like a couple $100.
And what was that?
Yeah,
That
I've
was
been real
like-
happy with mine too.
So
Garmin InReach, excellent.
Okay, Garmin InReach.
I agree.
Yep. And just a quick note. So the cost to go to the 406s is generally in the $500 range. The idea that we could get a PLB and get a lot of the same effects or possibly the same with something suggests that we should look into doing one or the other. So this has been a very helpful conversation. I'm still flying with an old style because the cost is substantial to make the change. And legally, if you've got an old style, you can keep it. But this conversation for all of us, that it sounds like we should look at one or the other. Sounds like another group buy.
Yeah, you can do a group buy of the PLBs. The PLBs are great because they're not installed in the airplane. You don't have to, you're not required to replace it with a $50 new battery every second annual. And you can take it with you when you go in someone else's airplane, which, as we all know, is much riskier than flying around in your own airplane. So when you hop on board with somebody else, you've got your PLB in your bag. I figure I probably get 4 times as much duty out of my PLB as I do out of the ELT that's mounted in my airplane. And that's why I'm not bothering to replace the one in the airplane.
Just a comment, if you do have it on your person, because when you leave the wreck, you're not going to find anything back in there.
Right, or if you're hanging upside down in the trees, the contents of your flight bag will not be accessible to you.
This is Chris again. I bought a simple vest off of Amazon.com that has a bunch of different pockets in it, and I put I attached that to the vest as well as just some basic survival equipment when I'm going places in the middle of nowhere. And they're cheap. For $75 you can get a survival kit that you can fill the pockets, and the vest is probably another $35, and you just put it on, and it wherever you land, you've got it. So you don't have to worry about it. I would recommend one of those too.
I would note, just looking at this Aviation Consumer article, one point they make, which is true, is that the whole locator transmitter concept is basically based on, more than 20, 30 years ago. And they're saying the data seems to be indicating in the era of ADS-B that locating the airplane is going to be a significantly different exercise in an all ADS-B environment. Anyway, the data is very provocative in it. And I'd recommend anybody read it. I'm not an advocate either way. I was surprised by it.
I'm an advocate. That their articles are just super high quality and fascinating every month. That's my favorite publication right now.
Yeah, like I said, that article, like I said, I'm not an advocate in either position, and they just come down and just say, boy, it surprises, but there is no persuasive argument and that the what everybody thought would happen from ELTs when they first mandated them, what was 1975, it just hasn't borne out in practice. The
How much is that ELB?
I think that's $250 or $300 if I remember.
I do just want to relay Pat Kiefer's comment for those that are attending by telephone, that the PLB requires a conscious person to activate it, whereas a 406 does not.
Well, that's not really correct. The inReach, you turn it on and it's constantly transmitting. It leaves a footprint on the map of exactly where you've gone, all the way to where you're going, where you stop going. So at least somebody who's looking at that would see that the footprint stops at some location. So that location is easy to translate. It'll actually show you if somebody goes into a motel, you can literally tell what room they're in. But if you don't turn it on, it's useless, and it doesn't turn on by itself.
How long's the battery good for?
I'm sorry.
Long time.
Once you turn it on, how long is the battery good for?
A couple days, I think.
Oh, the battery lasts a long, long time. I went to Alaska and back and never shut the thing off on the same set of batteries.
There's one more thing it does is it provides GPS too. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you have no cell reception and you don't have if your cell's not getting GPS, you can get GPS through this device as well to at least try to get a better location of where you're at. So it seems like it's a win-win all the way around.
But the 406 in my airplane is connected to my 530, and it's constantly being updated as to its position. So the 406 knows where I am at all times. That's how I'm sure that the people at Eglin were able to locate me so quickly.
Flight Radar 24 does the same thing, Dave. I know every time you take off.
That's true.
But if you can't, what was it that turned on that you couldn't get it to turn? Because you weren't there to turn it off. You had to turn it on. What was it that caused it to turn on?
Oh, well, this was really stupid. I had my airplane in the paint shop, and they took all the moldings out of the windows to get the interior out. But they forgot that those moldings hold the windows in place. So they after they stripped the airplane, they power washed it and they flooded the interior of the airplane, and that caused the switch in the cabin to short out, and that set off the ELT, and it ran like that for 3 full days.
But it didn't happen until you had left the area.
That is correct. That's right. So I was not a very happy guy, as a matter of fact, but
what a ton of information that I had no concept on. That's great information. I have a few more items on the back page of emergency. And this is, there was a bonanza that was coming north, and they got over Myrtle Beach, and they were in a rainstorm, but for some reason they were only 5,000 feet, whatever, the door popped open. I can't imagine if the door is secure, why it came all the way up from Florida and waited to Myrtle Beach before the door popped open, but nevertheless it did. And it is, when your door comes up and over the top of your airplane, how on earth you're supposed to get that door closed? Especially if it's raining out. If it's not raining out, you could just fly somewhere and land.
well, I don't think much rain comes in, even if it's raining.
Yeah.
With the door open.
With the door open. Well, it's certainly not
very noisy though.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. Wow. So there's a checklist. It says door open in flight. The overhead latch is open. Well, you should have caught that when it, maybe there was something wrong with the overhead latch. I remember being standing up on the way to Florida on the top of a Cherokee 180, and we're taking the overhead latch apart to try and get it to work better so that we can continue the flight. But was the overhead latch the issue when the door popped open? But nevertheless, here's a door pops open, and how far do you have to go? If you're not going very far, live with it, and don't worry about it. It's not worth losing control of the airplane. But here's the deal: the guy is not used to flying the airplane on off autopilot. And so he was now off autopilot, and he was struggling to get. So which rudder do you step on in order to get that door closed? You step on one and make the wind face the door, or do you step on the right rudder to make the low pressure on that cabin side?
The answer is C. In a Comanche, it doesn't matter which rudder pedal you step on or how hard you step on it, the door is not going to close until you're back on the ground.
Right.
Well, it can be done, but it's a pain in the ass.
Stop button with it. It says in the checklist, it says overhead door latch open, lower latch push down. Well, you're not going to get it to push down, as Malcolm says, in the aircraft. Slip to the right, it says in this checklist, but Pete gave me another checklist that said push to the door side, so you have pressure on that side of the door. But you're right, you're not going to get that overhead latch closed. And then it says close by pulling on the top and bottom. Oh, sure. Yeah. Well,
is this a checklist for a Comanche? Because we don't have overhead door latches.
Yeah, it's a Comanche 260.
Did the C's have a second door latch like a Cherokee?
No. As a matter of fact, I don't know why that is in the back, because John's doesn't have an overhead door latch. Look at that C behind us.
It's an add-on mod, and I've got a 63 250, and I have an overhead latch.
You have an overhead
latch. That wasn't original.
Nice mod. It's a good idea.
Yeah, I have a 62 250 also with the overhead door latch.
Mm-hmm.
If the door is properly set up, you don't need the overhead latch.
Yeah,
the overhead latch comes into play when
that double
your
click.
regular latch doesn't.
Like a bonanza, you push on
properly.
that handle, it locks it.
My 66 260B does not have an overhead latch.
Well, none of them do.
Door
The
handle.
only ones that have an overhead latch are the ones that have been modified to add it, right?
Right, that's correct.
Right.
And I'll tell you, it seems sort of silly, like, oh, why would I need that? But if you're on a flight and you're in a cross-country mode and the door pops open, you can guess later how I know this.
I've been there, done that.
If the person in the passenger seat next to you has their down jacket laying on their lap when this happens, say, oh, I don't know, because it's a cold night in the middle of winter and you're 9,000 feet over Syracuse. And if they happen to have their wallet and keys in the pocket of said down jacket, they need to make a trip to the DMV and the locksmith, because they're never seeing any of it again. Whatever is sitting on the passenger's lap at the moment the door pops open is gone.
Yep.
I don't know about anybody else, but I've noticed when I've had a door pop open at a high-speed cruise, and according to my passenger looking back, I could feel it. I got a tiny bit of stabilator buffet. Got my attention right away. That's in a twin. I don't know if anybody else has had that same experience.
I have.
And that's very disturbing. In fact, when it
More than
happened,
a little flutter.
my son, who's an ATP airline pilot, he looked back and he said, I hate to tell you this now, but you're getting flutter on the stabilator. I slowed that sucker down to about 95 knots, so damn fast. You don't say flutter and relax in the same sentence.
Flutter means near destruction soon?
That's what it means.
Oh, wow. And it was because of the door coming open?
Just the door being open was enough to do it. And that's
Wow.
on a twin command 66
Yeah, right.
B model. And a lot of people don't realize it, by the way. If you look at them, the one thing about the B models are allegedly the fastest model because they have the thinnest stabilator. Look at the C's and they've got a thicker cord on them. But it also makes it a lot more critical for flutter. That's what I've been told. I'm not an aeronautical engineer.
Wow. On the last page of emergency procedures, I have the baggage door coming open as well. Now, in our 260C, we were confident, Kelly was very confident, just give that thing a little nudge and whoop, that thing is going to close. You have to worry about it. Others insist on locking that baggage door.
This I'm showing now is Larry Larkin's checklist for the open door.
Open door. Okay. If the latch opens, the door will trail around. Yeah, I think I read that. Trail slightly open, and the airspeed will reduce slightly. Fly the airplane and return to land. Check your nearest airport and go fix it on the ground.
I've discovered with my airplane on multiple occasions that back door, and I now do it religiously, it'll close. But if you put your thumb on the bottom and push just a little bit, it's like a double click. So it'll look closed, it'll feel closed, but it's like the latch is halfway. It does it all the time. So now I always push on it and hear the double click sound, I know it won't open.
I thought that John's was John. Doesn't your baggage door have a double click? Can you get it to click once it's you may not be on still.
I believe it will click part way, and then what I generally do is I hold it about a foot open and I just let it drop, and it
let it drop
closes.
And it'll close fine, so you don't have to do any extra pressure.
Yeah, I put one of those. I put a door steward on there, stops that click from dropping. I won't do it because now it gradually comes down, but it'll click. But one click, if you don't put your thumb on it, you don't get the second click, and it'll pop open the minute you hit about 100 knots. Not open.
Same way.
It'll pop that one click, and then you've got air noise rushing your whole flight. It's very annoying.
And if you happen to have baggage back there within a couple feet of the door, that's gone too.
Oh yeah, it is. And they say in the emergency procedures, if you can, just forget about it. If you're going to lose stuff out of the baggage area, yeah, that's what's going to happen. But chances are it's hinged in the front, so it'll slipstream close, stay closed.
It's hinged on the top.
Oh, it's hinged on the
My
top.
experience is that there is a double latch, and the inner latch to where the door is tight is the one that pops, but usually it catches the second latch, so it doesn't open enough that anything departs.
Yeah.
And I have the same thing. I've checked my latch and actually have had to file it slightly to because it had a rounded spot to get it square again, so it wouldn't have a tendency to vibrate out of that second spot. So you got to look at the wear on those latches, and then I always do the thumb push and/or give it in the back of my hand, back of my fist, a couple smacks to make sure that thing is definitely seated.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought when I was closing that baggage door as well.
Can I, where can we get a copy of this Larry Larkin emergency procedures checklist? Is that available on the Comanche website, or how do we get a hold of that?
I have it as a PDF right now.
Yeah, why don't you put it on the Northeast Comanche Tribe site?
Yep. If you go to northeastcomanche.org and you go to documents,
what's up?
It will be
This one
there.
is not
Pete, is
on
it there
yet.
now, or is it? Okay, yep, it'll be there. What,
It will
Pete,
be.
tomorrow?
It's a PDF.
Yeah.
So
And
thank
the
you very
Maurice Taylor landing gear, the Maurice Taylor, it's not called alternate, but it's abnormal landing gear operations checklist is there now.
Right. That's what I was just looking for. I can't find it.
Last
I'll
item
post the
on,
link into the chat window. Sorry, George.
oh, last item on my, my
This is
checklist here.
because there's a mistake on that. That happens to be from my airplane. So would you roll it down just a little bit? Okay, stop. Right there.
Hey, Rose.
There's a mistake.
He's been in the bathroom.
In the white.
Felix?
Best, let's see, best rated power on,
Everything.
129 miles.
Food.
That's wrong.
Background on. I've come to the end of my emergency checklist, but the last item is kind of disturbing and could be used as a joke. It is actually on this checklist that was printed. Everything else is serious except when it comes to this, but this can be serious, I guess. The family pet is out of control. So the aircraft climb immediately, if possible. Is that going to put the pet to sleep? The lack of oxygen? I don't understand. A lot of this particular item, I just don't understand. Anybody ever have a pet on board? I used to fly with my dog in the right seat. He was wonderful.
I know of a case, this actually happened in Florida. This guy and his wife bought a cat for $10,000.
Oh my God.
And they went out and they picked it up in the airplane. They had it in a cage. And the cat went a little bit berserk in the cage.
Yeah.
So she decided to let the cat out of the cage.
Uh-oh.
He was going to hold it. Well, that cat destroyed the inside of that airplane and pretty much destroyed both he and his wife. I mean, when they got out of the airplane, they were trailing blood. But what he did ultimately is he opened the window and threw the cat out.
This is, it's unbelievable what it says on this checklist. It says pet, contain to back seat if possible. And then it says, if still is not controllable, door open, eject pet. And then family. What do you do with the family? Console them.
Well, this guy lost a lot of, this was the most expensive cat he ever had.
Oh my God. You know, we went to Pennsylvania one time to pick up a cat for one of my students. It was one of those hairless cats. They're not only expensive, but they're ugly. Whoa. I think for now, he's still got that cat and joined with a couple other cat people.
I have a
I
question.
love my cat, but I'm not sure if I'd want to throw him out the window.
This was pretty desperate, I guess. This was about 20 years ago.
Oh. I couldn't believe
ahead,
I
Hank.
found that on the checklist. Go ahead.
Do lobsters count as pets?
Yes, they do, up to a point.
Hank, are you thinking about that incident that Bill Jackson, former ICS president and former Northeast Tribe chief, had over New York's Bay there with the lobsters?
Yes, precisely that. What do you
For
do?
anybody who wants to see a really, really interesting in-cockpit emergency, there is a link to the story. I think Pete renamed it to Hostile Passengers, but Bill Jackson originally called it Lobsters in the Cockpit. And it's about the incident that happened when he was flying right in some of the busiest airspace in the world, and a bunch of lobsters he was planning to bring along to have as a dinner got out of their bag and weren't too happy. It's a very entertaining read.
Did they eject them over the densely populated area?
No, he did not. He got them all the way home and gave them their just dessert.
It's just crazy. I never thought I'd find something like that. Pete, I appreciate the emails that you sent. I copied all of them and spent the day looking through them. Very enjoyable, very reasonable information. And like everything else, emergencies are not predictable. But if we have more sessions like this, and we encounter an emergency situation, we're more likely able to deal with it with a reasonable line of action.
This is an absolutely perfect time of year with this COVID stuff to do some armchair flying. You know, take out your POH if you want the full details, or just your checklist, and go through these emergency procedures so that you can remember them as being something that you have heard of before, as opposed to what the world do I do now? As George says, the emergencies are totally unpredictable. You don't want to be surprised so that you have no clue. Yet you can't sit there on the left-hand seat and look to the right seat and say, take over. That doesn't happen.
I'd like to add something. Most emergencies are not, in fact, emergencies. That is to say, if you just slow down and think about what occurred, you may be able to solve your problem. It may be something just as simple as you switched fuel tanks and you switched to an empty tank.
Right. That's what I said. Yeah, it's probably something you just did.
Right.
That took the engine out.
And if you have your alternator quits, that's not an emergency.
No, it is not.
Most of the things that occur, if your door popping open, that's not an emergency. So you got to think about what you're doing. Just don't panic. Because
I've always said, I'll fly with one thing wrong.
Exactly.
If it pops up, I'll fly with one thing wrong. If the door pops open or something like that, I'll fly with one thing wrong. I won't fly with two things wrong. I'll find a place to land immediately.
I had a flight from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, back to Rochester in the middle of the winter, and I took off, and the alternator quit, and the gear started falling down. And I said to the passenger, I said, I can fly with one of these problems, but I can't fly with both of them.
That's it.
I turned around and went back. Well, there were no mechanics around. And so I finally asked if I could borrow some jacks, and they said yes. I fixed the problem with the gear falling down, and I took off and I flew back to Rochester just using the battery. Had no problem at all. But I absolutely agree. I can fly with one problem. I can't fly with two.
That's exactly right. Yeah. My sentiments.
George, what happens if the problem is sitting in the right-hand seat?
I'm sorry.
Eject the passenger.
Yeah.
Oh, Alan, configuring the airplane, is it possible to fly a FedEx airplane without configuring it correctly?
We actually did have, the short answer is yes. So we did have an incident where it was actually a friend of mine. He was flying an MD-11 from Memphis to Los Angeles, and over Arkansas, they ended up having the number 3 engine fail. And when I mean fail, I don't mean just wind down. I mean the engine broke off the mount.
Oh my God.
And fell. And so now he's basically went from a 3-engine airplane to a 2-engine airplane. And so again, they're following their checklist. Of course, the checklist is like, hey, fuel control lever off, fire handle down. Well, there's no engine anymore. But anyways, I think the amazing thing about that was their approach speed was about 180, almost 190 knots. And the tire speed, if I remember, was 210 on 11. So they got it on the ground and they didn't roll off the end of you know, Memphis's longest runway, which I think is about 10, maybe 11,000. I don't quite remember. But yeah, that's the biggest one. I think what a lot of people have said is very true in that most emergencies, or what you think are emergencies, are not. They're problems. Right. You know, I've lost a vacuum pump twice in my Comanche, an alternator once. Had a door, actually not pop open, but the upper latch wouldn't latch. I did the fuel pump thing where I taxied out once with the fuel pump on out of, let's see, where was it? I guess either New Orleans or someplace down there, Biloxi. Took off, and as soon as, you know, I went through my after gear up checklist, I turned the fuel pump off, and the engine went, oh, well, I don't like that, vapor lock. So a lot of those things are like I say, they're not emergencies. But what is an emergency, and I had this younger and skinnier days, kind of a quick sea story, and it does apply to a Comanche, but a fire in flight. If you have a fire in flight, you have some serious problems. And so, again, like I say, this was back about 1985. I was an instructor in the Navy Training Command. I was flying a TA-4 Skyhawk. It's not a Cessna Skyhawk. If you're not familiar with that, it's kind of the same airplane the Blue Angels had before they went to the F-18 Hornet. So it was myself and another instructor. We were flying from El Paso back to our base at Kingsville, Texas. We took off and passing 17 for 19,000 feet. Basically, the engine blew up. And from the time we got the first compressor stall to the time we were totally on fire and had to eject was probably somewhere between 30 and 45 seconds. So there was no doubt in my mind. I never knew we were on fire. Actually, my friend up front, another instructor pilot, after we ejected and landed it, you know, I thought, hey, you know, we were rolling over, and I said, I thought, you know, if the airplane rolled over all the way upright, I was going to eject this. And as it's rolling over, he called eject. And if you have two instructors, kind of the standard rule is, hey, somebody calls it eject, you're going for the E-ride at Disneyland. So when we landed, anyways, you know, we kind of got together, and I said, wow, you know, Rick, did you feel the flight controls? We didn't have any hydraulic power left. And he went, hey, Alan, did you see the fire behind your head? So, whoa. And so again, you know, and that even flying a Boeing 777 with FedEx, and I just retired in December, but that was probably the scariest thing that I could imagine happening, even in a big cargo plane like that, because the upper deck has all this firefighting equipment, and the lower deck does not. So if you have a cargo fire, and we've had a few, and you're over the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, you know, you know, that's a tough call to make. Do you keep fighting the fire, or do you possibly make a ditch? So if you have a fire in a Comanche, you know, my advice is, you know, you better get on the ground in like less than 5 minutes if you can. So anyway, food for thought. That's probably the scariest thing, emergency-wise, that would cause me concern, is in some kind of fire in flight, whether it be a wing fire, you know, you got a fuel tank got a spark or something's going on, because you are not going to nurse an airplane 50 or 100 miles to get it to land. So you better get on the ground real quick.
Well, that brings up a good question. What do you do if you get vapor lock when you turn off the electric fuel pump?
Turn it back on.
Just turn it back on, you know, and then, you know, in my case, I just turned around and landed and kind of let the engine cool and went, oh, that's why that happened. You know, duh. I would imagine if you're in flight, somebody correct me that's got more knowledge than me, but if you got up to altitude where things got cooler, then you could kind of slowly maybe turn the fuel pump off and you kind of get back to normal operation. That's kind of a...
This actually came up at the top 10 tips for new Comanche owners, which we did a part B and part A of. The main problem with vapor lock comes with the carbureted engines, where we've got one mechanical pump everybody's got, and then there's one electric for the 180s, two electric for the 250s. If you forget and leave them running on the ground or leave them on too long during climb out, it can cause your mechanical fuel pump, which isn't getting the same amount of cooling fuel to it, to develop vapor lock. And when you turn off your electric fuel pump, your mechanical fuel pump doesn't really have anything but vapor in there, and so your engine stops. The way to stop this is either to, if you forget, let's just say you forgot because we're human, and you get up to altitude and you go to turn off your electric fuel pump, it's a really good idea to remember you can just turn your electric fuel pump back on. It was working before, it'll work again. Just like George Merriam said, just undo the last thing you did. Correct. And in that case, it was turning off your electric fuel pump. In this case, turn it off again, watch your fuel pressure when you do that, and keep your finger on your electric fuel pump switch so that you don't have to go hunting for it. And then if your fuel pressure starts to drop, turn it back on again. What's happening is you're helping your mechanical fuel pump to get through that vapor lock situation. And if you turn it off a few more times, typically your mechanical fuel pump clears its vapor lock and you can go back to your normal configuration, which is fuel pump, which is your electric fuel pump off, and your mechanical fuel pump is always running. So that's the big thing, is it's more of a problem in our carbureted engines than our fuel injected engines. It's actually real easy to fix, but interestingly, after the ComancheZOOM, where we did the top 10 tips, which then the tip was, don't leave your electric fuel pump running on the ground, right? Just take off with it, and then once you've reached a nice comfortable altitude, go ahead and turn it off, but keep your finger on the switch and watch your fuel pressure gauge to make sure it's staying up there. That 2 people posted in various ways in the following week after that saying, thank you for having this. And another person, we had posted the the AOPA Air Safety Institute's analysis of the 1982 to 1992 accidents. And that included a discussion, and that was thanks to Malcolm Dickinson saying, hey, CJ, this section's really helpful. So somebody had read that section, gone to altitude, happened to be traveling with his pregnant wife, and when things got a little quiet, he had just read that section and was able to troubleshoot it right away. So as George said, as Dave Gittleman said, who's now outed himself as the person when I said, you've been helping us for 40 years, Dave, what would you like us to know? Is to just rehearse these things, read about them ahead of time. It's why the majors are so much safer, is because they practice all these emergencies. And so then they're not nearly as exciting when they happen. They're like, oh yeah, I got a checklist for that. I got a procedure for that.
I would like to add one thing. On the 250s, they have 2 electric fuel pumps. Well, you may think they're both working when only one is working. So I would suggest, I don't do very many annuals on 250s, but when I do, I always disconnect them and make sure that they're both working. There was an accident quoted in the Delphi forums thing about vapor lock. And if you read the NTSB report on that accident, only one fuel pump was working. I don't think that was the cause of his problem, but it may have been an ancillary cause that he couldn't keep the engine running. I don't know.
One of the previous thing, I think it was the 10 tips one, someone was talking about the fuel pumps for the 250, where there are 2 of them. When you turn the electric fuel pump on the ground, when you get ready to start, it goes chunk, 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 chunk. You can hear that. If you have the 250 with 2 of them, it goes chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. You could hear both of them. If you only hear one, one's not working.
You're hard of hearing, you might not.
Well, this is before the engine starts, so you have a chance.
Yeah, and that was courtesy of Hank Spellman, who said that there's kind of a Latin beat when you've got both fuel pumps, both of the electric fuel pumps on the 250 operating, because they have slightly different rhythms or cycling speeds. In the 180, for example, I just hear dit, 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 dit. It's completely staccato. Can anybody who's got a 250 confirm that when they turn on their electric fuel pump switch, they can hear kind of 2 different pumps slightly out of sync running?
That's what I just said.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like cumbia or something along that. Latin beat was about right.
Well, now we
I could
know.
just-
We're going to have to get a 250 t-shirt. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to throw out the problems with a shorting out electrical trim wire, which George is familiar about for an emergency procedure as well, and
That was
he
a
could
flight to
perhaps add to
remember.
that.
We had a runaway trim, and it was a serious situation because John had his hands full, and I happened to be sitting in the right seat, and he's holding on to the handle in the ceiling and trying to stop that electric trim, and he's saying it's a runaway trim, and I'm looking. Luckily, we had the C model 260, and I'm looking right at the circuit breakers, and the one farthest to the right, minus two unpullable circuit breakers, was the electric trim, and I pulled it, and he was all set. And the flight continued until we lost our vacuum pump.
All on the same day?
Yeah, it was the same flight, and a little farther up, going towards what were we going to Rockland or Bar Harbor or something like that. And at that point, he just simply reached up and put his auxiliary fuel pump button on. Fix that button.
Vacuum pump. The electric vacuum pump, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a great flight, great flight. And neither one of which, well, actually, you know, I want to call that runaway trim as an emergency procedure, because
Absolutely.
if you get your hand on that circuit breaker, you get your hands full.
And I would like to throw out as well, if I may, I've been looking for the little rings that can be put onto the circuit breakers so you can identify them and pull them more readily. I have gotten a couple from, wasn't Sporties. I got them from someplace and they seem too big. Has anybody gotten the little circuit breaker rings that actually fit?
Those are Potter Broomfield circuit breakers.
Okay.
You might just look under in.
Try another supplier. Was it Aircraft Spruce or Sky Geek or Sporties or what?
I think actually I got them from Sky Geek, and I gotten a few if anybody needs them, because they're too big for my circuit breakers anyway. They just fall right off.
Look at McMaster Car and see if they have them. Look under the Potter Broomfield circuit breakers, or Woods is another name.
Yeah, those collared breakers are for, are those collars for the click-on breakers?
Yes.
Click-on manufactured breakers, yeah.
The one emergency we haven't talked about, this happened to me, my Warrior, is that cruise at 2,400 RPM. I went to pull back on the throttle and it was completely jammed. And I've read about several accidents where this has happened to other people, but I used my mixture control as my throttle and was able to land normally.
That's a good one.
You could also use the ignition switch.
Yeah, shut it off.
Right.
Well, that's hard to make an approach with, on and off. I had to make an approach.
They do it at Rhinebeck all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, can I ask both Rob Lenert and George Merriam and anyone else who's got a lot of instruction experience to talk about state of mind? Because to get back to Dave Gittleman's first request of me, it was to talk about the psychology of high stress situations. And it really, and we've got some great emergencies and some great emergency procedures, but can we talk about the state of mind and about what it is that'll, what are we likely to end up in?
It'll all depend on the situation. I was flying it was a P-51, but it was the scale model that had a Japanese engine in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was bringing it back from Cleveland with a new engine. And I want to say, too, that I've never flown an airplane with a certified engine, never lost a certified engine. I've had some sputtering engines, but I've never lost a Continental or a Lycoming. But here I was with a Honda engine or Subaru engine or some darn thing. and the engine blew up. And I was over the Hudson River, real close to Columbia County, and I could not get it to glide that farther. You go to best glide speed, and if you've got that and you can make a runway, then you're fine. After I was with a chase plane, and I said the chase plane, the engine has gone on me, and they came around, and it looked like an authentic World War II picture because I was trailing smoke by a quarter or half a mile. And it was just a matter of, I'm going to land the plane. It's just committed. I've got to set it up for best glide speed. There's nothing else you can do with a pre-landing checklist. But the question is going to be, are you going to use flaps? Are you going to use gear? You don't put the gear down, and it always is dependent on the terrain. You are going to land the plane. Now you want to land it as slow as possible. So you can see where I'm going with this thing. I've got too much work to do to land the plane to even think about an attitude. You're busy flying the plane. And when it stops, you may cop an attitude, but it's just work to do. You landed the plane a million times. It's just that hedgerow that you were about to go through turned out allowed me to go through the hedgerow, and then as the length and nose on a P-51 dug a furrow, I had stopped short of 100 feet. And then I was able to roll the canopy back. Because that canopy, as I said earlier, the canopy was a two-fisted situation. You had to hold the lever and crank the knob at the same time. I'm not doing that stuff when I got to fly the plane. I only had 4,000 feet to deal with. So other stories about landing off airport. Another one, a guy had shut off my fuel pump, and I was towing a glider over Springfield, and miraculously happened to be right next to Westover when the engine quit after 2 hours. And I didn't know it. He had turned my and whose fault is a fuel situation in the off position, fuel lever in the off position. So you're not going to make the field. I was right next to Westover. I was talking to Westover Tower, and I said, I'm going to use your airport to land because I don't have an engine. And so in discussion afterwards, I had to release the banner in order to get to the airport. But there again, I don't remember an attitude of any kind. It's flying a plane. You're busy flying the plane.
It also helps sometimes to remember that when the plane is behaving in such a way that you're going to land where you don't want to land necessarily, from that point on, the plane belongs to the insurance company.
That's true. Save you, save the passengers. Now you're flying gliders, Pete.
Yep.
One of my students as a glider pilot came to me with 400 hours of glider time, and he said, "What does it take to get a powered license?" And I said, "We got to start over." So he did, and he bought an RV7, and so he started over. And so I saw him just a month ago, and I said, "So I haven't seen you for a little bit. Have you had any off airport landing?" And he said, "I do all the time." Because if you're in a glider and you're trying to make it back to the field, he's up in Springfield, Vermont, and he goes up and down the Green Mountains, and he's landing off airport all the time. It's routine. Wow. Well, I guess you use the spoilers just correctly and pick your spots when you know you don't have lift enough, but there's no room for an attitude when you're.
Gliders are cheating.
Hey guys, just wanted to jump in and add something for a second. My name is Ben. I'm newish. This is my first time that I had a camera and a microphone. So hi everybody. And I am a CFI. I'm new to my Comanche. I've only got about 25, 30 hours in it so far. But as the subject about engine outs come out, I just wanted to show you the book I'm reading, Engine Out Survival Tactics, which I just found. I don't know if anybody's read it. But I'm a CFI. I've got, I don't know, 600 hours dual given, something like that. And this book has really opened my eyes to how we train for and how we teach engine out practice. It's written by a guy who was an Air Force fighter pilot, and he kind of takes you through the military pilot's perspective on how GA deals with engine failures. And it kind of, I was a little surprised reading it. It laid out sort of the, okay, the FAA says, run through your immediate checklist and, point for the field and, aim at it, fly around, see if you could have hit it. Okay, cool, we're done. I won't get, into too much detail. You guys can read it for yourselves, but it's a good book. It gives you a lot of perspective on what we should be thinking about and what we should be doing in training as we're preparing for that moment when we might have the engine out. And it also gives you some pointers on how to best simulate engine out performance safely in your own aircraft, how to figure out what the actual performance is going to be, and then how to configure your aircraft and how to properly fly it in order to simulate what it would really be like with the engine out, not just that whole, well, let's pull it back to idle and see what we get. So I just wanted to plug the book. I don't get royalties or anything. I wish I did, but Engine Out Survival Tactics. So cool. There's my 2 cents.
You're an instructor. We are instructors. And half the battle when you're flying a twin, you're flying it on single engine because that's the multi-engine rating. But you're flying a single, and we're always doing emergency procedures with the idea that you're going to lose the engine sometime. You're going to have to land the airplane without power. So I say I've got 3 tools to land an airplane, and we can discuss that. But the power is most important. And the other tool to land the airplane is your ground track. You can adjust the ground track. You can go away from the airport or the intended landing spot, or you can head right for it. The last one is the flaps.
Drag.
You can use the flaps according to the wind conditions and so forth. You got 3 tools to land an airplane, and I did not say airspeed, because the airspeed, according to the POH, is configured. You should use a certain glide speed. If your engine quits, go to DG glide speed. Use that all the way to your point. Now, if you're too high, you're going to steer away from your point. If you're too low, you have to steer towards your point. Adjust the ground track. If you find yourself over your target, you need to get down. Use your flaps, and you can nose it down at that point. Adjust the airspeed a little bit to get towards your target. Well, we do that constantly, trying to get the airplane back on the ground without power. Power is the most important tool to land the airplane. Then ground track, then flaps and slip, of course.
So a couple of things for engine outs, and I'm guessing that Ben has been looking at this as well, but we have a couple of tools that general airplanes don't. We can bring our gear up or put it down, and that makes such a big change. Our glide slope ratio goes, I actually just asked Zach Grant about this. I said, what's my glide slope ratio with my gear down? And remember, all of our airframes are the same. We're one of the few airplanes where our fuselages are identical, from the 180s through the 260s all the way to the Cs and the twins. And so we have a lot of things that apply to all of us more than the Cessnas. And I only know this because Mark Sullivan and STC Group and Genesis and Garmin are trying to certify autopilots for our aircraft. But we are 7-to-1 glide ratio with our gear down. And evidently we are 13-to-1 with our gear up and our prop pulled all the way back in the singles, or I don't know about the twins, if it's 13-1 still in the twins, because you guys can feather. But it's a huge, huge difference to how far we can go. And then you can use your gear and your flaps to manage your glide ratio and your range. Therefore, your third notch of flaps, you have more drag than lift, but your first 2 notches of flaps, in theory, you've got more lift than drag.
Another good tool to use is a slip, if you know how to do it.
That's right. Right. We practice that, and it's part of the initial check ride for the primary student.
And Ben, do you have anything to add from what you're reading on the state of mind and our tools?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's sort of general CFI advice, which is the first time you ever think about doing something in an airplane shouldn't be when you have to do that thing in the airplane. You should go through all the chair flying, sit in front of the poster of the cockpit, and reach out and touch the controls and say what you're doing as you're doing it. And then, sit in the cockpit with the airplane powered off on the ground and, reach out and touch the controls and talk about it as you're doing it. And then, just go through it. And, obviously with a CFI, if you need one, or even solo, if you're comfortable, practice the engine outs, go ahead and, reach over and, do whatever it is you've decided to start that simulation. Mostly, most folks will start it by, just pulling that throttle back to idle. And then, give that to yourself at some points when you're not necessarily expecting it. Just say, hey, at some point on my flight today, I'm going to give an engine out, or, if I've got an experienced co-pilot or something like that, I'll have them do that. And, figure it out as you go with a perfectly working aircraft so that you can walk yourself through it. Because essentially you're trying to build that, mental preparedness and that muscle memory to have done something before, to have seen it before, so that the first time you're trying to do it isn't when you're trying to figure it out and fumbling with the checklist. So it's been a really good. I'm not quite finished with the book. I've got about 20 pages left. But one thing I wanted to ask the group about is it suggests, actually going out and doing some flight testing, because obviously none of our aircraft are the way they were when they rolled out from the factory. The POH stuff is probably going to be close, but not necessarily. A lot of folks have speed mods and stuff like that that'll affect the aircraft. So it suggests actually going out and doing some flight testing and trying it in the idle configuration clean, so just pull it back to idle and leave it the way it is, flaps up, gear up, prop fat, and then, try it idle dirty, try it at idle with the prop pulled all the way back to course as well to reduce your drag, and record the numbers that you get, and then you use those numbers to help you build your training profile. So I was curious if anybody has done any of that type of stuff, if that's somewhere in the body of Comanche knowledge. If it's not, then I'm happy to go out and run a couple tries myself and publish it. But I think it'd be best to do with several different aircraft so we can kind of build a profile if that doesn't already exist.
I spent some time with one of my instructors building a control setting list for IFR. What is the cruise setting? What is my descent, my climb, approach, pattern, all that stuff. And I did exactly that. There was an article by, I believe it was AOPA, it might have been EAA, but there was an article where someone else was doing that. He suggested that you set up your plane, because it's hard to keep, to write notes down while you're doing it. Set your plane up in those various configurations and then take a picture of the panel. And then when you're on the ground, look at the pictures to see what the settings are.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, when you were doing that, did you practice at all with the engine out stuff, or was this all, setting up for the approach?
They were all flight conditions, but what I wanted was target settings for, this is my target for cruise speed. This is my target for a 500-foot descent. This is my target for a 1,000-foot descent. This is my target for, whatever, in the holding pattern. This is my target for the approach to a runway, the traffic pattern. This is my target for descent to landing. That's what I was looking for.
Has anybody else done what Ben had asked and built those profiles? Because I think what Ben suggested, which is to get that body of knowledge put together and published, would be great. I'd like to say, Ben, we need to collect this and make it public. It'll help us a lot.
It sounds like the sort of stuff we do with the pilots when they come to the CPPP program when we go fly with them on Sunday, going up and finding out what their descent rate is with the engine at idle, how much less the descent rate is when you pull the prop back, how much less it is when you raise the gear. We don't make a chart out of it, but the chart that Pete's talking about, of course, is made by every instrument rating student at the beginning of their training. They have to get in the airplane that they're going to be using for the instrument rating and figure out what power setting gives them a 500 foot per minute descent at their approach speed, and what gives them, et cetera, et cetera.
That's what I was talking about, configuring your airplane.
Right.
One of the things that comes out of the stuff in the book, and I found the page here, basically they have you doing on a known distance course. So the author had picked a spot. He's got a flat, straight road somewhere near his home area. And he picked a spot there at a known elevation and started at a known point, and he would fly. He'd figured out what the book glide ratio was supposed to be. And so he worked it out to where if the aircraft flew exactly the book glide ratio, he would end up 1,000 feet above his spot, exactly over it. And using his GPS, he was able to see how close he was to that. And so he did it in the idle clean with a flat prop, idle clean with the prop course, and then he also did it at idle with the gear down. And then he flew. He did all his in a Bonanza, so he used the ABS training setup to see how close that came. And the information that he was able to get out of it was what was going to be your descent rate, what was the distance per 1,000 feet, so what was the actual glide ratio, and then he also came out with a degree glide slope that he was on. And so that's kind of the initial building procedure, is you get that data, and then what you do is you actually start practicing and you set up exactly what you want to see if you do it right. So he used his little reference point on the straight road, and then he used those pitch and power setting, or airspeed at best glide, and the power settings and the configuration, and he was able to train himself what it should look like. Hey, if I have the engine failure right here, I'm going to be aiming for a spot that is at this point on the windscreen or below, or a practical reference point, so that when you're not in a training area, you're not by a known location, you're able to build that reference in your own mind of, hey, if anywhere, on the fuel cap or inboard, I can hit at this glide ratio. Anything outside of that, I can't hit, so there's no point in trying to aim for it. And so he was actually able to build his own profile for his own aircraft, but, it should hold true for any Bonanza. I'm happy to start working on building that for the Comanche. If anybody has already done that, it would be great to build off of. If not, then once I get my plane back from the avionics shop, I'll go out and start working on it.
Now, a question about the certification standard of the glide ratio. For certification standards on the single, are you allowed to, quote, feather the propeller? Because in a real engine emergency, loss of oil pressure, your prop would flatten out. So as a certification standard, is that allowed?
I don't think I'm not familiar with the CAR 3 or the Part 23 certification standards for that. My assumption would be that the book published glide ratio is going to be least favorable. Almost always certification leans towards least favorable. But the thing is, you can build a profile for, hey, what is this going to look like if I am able to, flatten out the prop? And then what is this going to look like if I've truly had a catastrophic engine failure and the prop is windmilling? And so you as a pilot can assess what you see and figure out, hey, I can hit anything under my wingtip because I was able to get the prop back. Or, hey, this thing's windmilling, I need to aim for something from the wing joint inboard or something like that.
Okay.
I'm going to do a time check here. It's about 9:15, and I'm starting to suspect we should do a whole Zoom on just this topic. There's enough here to take people through the process of putting that together. It also varies from airplane to airplane, and so knowing how to do it is seems like it's pretty valuable, and it might be kind of fun. I also know our recording people have to spend some time getting the recordings to spool and then upload. So Pete, do you want to call it? We'll leave the meeting up and open if people want to chat. I think if you've got an emergency you've gone through, bringing that knowledge into the group would be fantastic. But
Yeah,
for now, I'm just
I'm
gonna.
a co-host on this one, so I won't kill it if I leave. I think I will stop the recording at this point. It's been terrific. And the recording should be available tomorrow on northeastcomanche.org on the ComancheZOOM page. There'll be a link there with the title of this Comanche Zoom. So at this point, I'm going to stop the recording. Good night for you, all you people.